Morning. On a nasty, rainy morning, it's good to see you out here for convocation. Our convocation speaker today is from within our own ranks. This is Heather Braddock. Heather studied at Liberty University, went on to get a master's in counseling, and she has been in place as King University's counselor since 2019. As we come up toward the end of the semester, we thought it'd be a good idea to talk a little bit about stress, and she is somebody who is always accessible for you to talk about stress or anything else. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather Braddock.
Good morning. Does it stress you out to be here on a Monday morning? Yes, just say yes, just to appease me a little bit. Like you said, my name is Heather Braddock. I am a licensed professional counselor with a mental health service provider designation in the state of Tennessee and Virginia. I have been doing counseling for probably 11, 12 years now, and I have been here at King for 6 years, and I am your campus counselor. So if you have anything going on from stress to depression, relationship issues, even more serious things like eating disorders, self-harm, suicidal ideation, I am here for you. And as long as you are a student, you can come to the counseling center and receive as many free counseling sessions as needed. So while you're here, utilize that, because that is a great asset to you that is available to you the entire time you're a student. But this morning we're going to talk about stress. This tends to be a very stressful time of the semester. College students get very stressed around this time. You just walked through midterms in the past 2 weeks, and you're going to be going into finals in the next few weeks. Believe it or not, that is only a few weeks away. Those final projects are going to be due, those final papers. And so there's a lot of stress happening this time in the semester. And this is the time where I see a lot of students coming in and they're just feeling, they use the word overwhelmed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so that's what we're going to talk about this morning. I do want a little bit of audience participation, just so you don't fall asleep on me, because it is an early Monday morning and it's cold and rainy outside. So feel free to interact with me a little bit. All right, so stress defined. Stress defined is a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension and may be a factor in disease causation. So prolonged stress over a long period of time can actually cause disease. The term stress was coined by Hans Selye, and it is defined as the nonspecific response of the body to any demand for change. You guys are constantly going through change. Every week you have a change happening at this age while you're in college. So what causes a college student to be stressed? This is where I want audience participation. So what do you guys think? Just yell it out. Nothing causes college students to be stressed. Finals, yes, thank you. You just got done with midterms, finals are around the corner. So just academics in general, right? Like you're here, that's the main reason you're here, is to get a degree and to study. So finals, tests, exams, quizzes, papers, projects, all of the academic things. And you don't just have one class, right? You have multiple classes, 4, 5, 6 classes, and they're all going to require finals soon or final projects, and that's all going to happen at the same time. Yes, what else can cause a college student to feel stress? Your phones are distracting. I'm just kidding. That can cause you to feel stress if there's drama happening. What about sports? Those of you who are athletes, can that be stressful at times? Yes, I see a lot of heads shaking. Yes, that can be stressful at times as well. You have practice almost every day. You have games in addition to your academics, and you have to be there on time. Some of you are on scholarship. You are brought here for a specific sport under a specific scholarship level, and you have to perform to that level, right? What else causes a college student to feel stressed? What about work? Some people work, some of you have multiple jobs. I know of several that have multiple jobs, either on campus or off campus. So you have to balance school and work, and sometimes a sport or extracurriculars like clubs or different organizations that you're a part of. What about relationships? That's something else that can cause a college student to feel stress. So whether it be friendships or romantic relationships, friendships, change every year in college. You come to King, you meet friends, you make friends, and then they graduate. And you're like, well, now I'm going to meet new people. And the next semester you meet new people. And then they graduate, or they transfer, or they move away, or something. And so there's a lot of friendship changes. There's also a lot of romantic relationship changes that happen in college that can be stressful. So dating is a lot more serious in college than it was high school. You're thinking of the future, you're thinking of marriage. And so when it's more serious, when there's problems there, that can be more stressful, right? When there's a breakup there, that can cause a lot of stress. Or when there's conflict there, it'll cause a lot more stress than maybe it did before. What else? What's something else that can cause stress in a college student? Planning for the future, yeah. So many of you don't know what's next. You don't know what's after college, what's after graduation. You're going to graduate in May or end of April, and you don't know what's happening in June. Yeah. And it's not just planning like a career. It's where am I going to live? Who am I going to live with? What am I going to be doing? Yeah, good. What else? What about family stress? Sometimes there's stuff going on at home, and you're away, and that can be really stressful because you're not there to be with your family. Another stressor I can think of is financial stress. There's a lot of financial stress that comes along with some college students. Some of you are paying for college on your own, right? Or if you're not paying for college on your own, you're paying for all the other things. You're paying for your cell phone, you're paying for your gas, insurance, things like that. So financial stress. So all of that is not just one thing. Put all of that together, and it can become a pretty serious, stressful situation that you're experiencing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about all that stress. Hang on. There we go. All right, so some myths about stress. The first myth is stress is everywhere. You just have to deal with it. Well, yes, stress is everywhere. That's not a myth. You just have to deal with it. That's the myth. We can deal with it. We can manage it. We can deal with stress in a manageable, healthy way. Everyone deals with stress in the same way. We all deal with stress differently. And we're going to talk about different ways to deal with stress here in a little bit, but we all experience stress differently, we act out in our stress differently, and we can deal with stress differently. Another myth is if you do not have any symptoms, you are not stressed. So this is the time of year where I have students come to me and they're just feeling sad or depressed or down, and they don't really know why. Nothing in particular has happened to make them feel bad. And when we start to look at what's going on, we realize they've been stressed for 2 months. They've been stressed since they moved in back in August. And that is the issue, is just prolonged stress over the course of the entire semester. So they may not have any direct symptoms of stress, but eventually it leads to feeling down, exhausted, and depressed. Another myth, only major symptoms of stress require attention. It's better to address stress early on before it gets really bad. And then the last myth would be stress is all bad. And you guys are probably thinking, yes, that is true. That is not a myth. Not all stress is bad. We're going to talk about, on the next slide, the difference between good stress and bad stress. And you guys are probably like, there's no such thing as good stress. All stress is bad. No one likes to feel stress. But there is a difference between good stress and bad stress. There we go. Good stress is more commonly known as acute stress, and that is the stress that causes you to perform better. Good stress is the type of stress that causes you to study for your exam or to start that paper early rather than the night before it's due. It causes you to show up to work on time, causes you to work hard while you're there, causes you to perform better when you have a game or a practice. right? So that's the type of good stress that you feel. If you never felt that good stress, you probably wouldn't be concerned about turning anything in on time, or you probably wouldn't be concerned about your performance on the athletic field or whatever it is. That's good stress. Bad stress is when it becomes chronic and long-term. So that's a chronic and long-term state of hypervigilance, and that's the stress that we're going to be focusing on today. The next one is the next slide is the human function curve. So this just kind of digs into that good stress and bad stress. So you can see the healthy tension there, the optimum zone. That is all that good stress. That is helping you perform better. It's actually a good thing that you experience that. That's called the anabolic phase. That's where our performance increases with our rising stress. So your grades will be better because you're going to spend more time studying or working on projects. There comes a point, though, where you tip into exhaustion, and that's called the catabolic phase, and that is where the body starts to break down. So if you've had stress, and then at some point you tip past the point of exhaustion into what is called the catabolic stage. And that's where you start to experience burnout, breakdown. That's where you start questioning, should I really stick out college? Should I really do this? That's where I start to hear students saying, I'm thinking about not coming back next semester, or things like that. Okay, so there are different types of stress responses. Has anyone, I'm gonna need just a little bit of participation. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the limbic system of the body. Some of you have. Dr. Ong has. Yeah, if you're a bio major, you may have heard of the limbic system. The limbic system is responsible for regulating our emotions. It's responsible for our stress response. Anyone ever heard of the amygdala? It's part of your brain. The amygdala is a tiny little piece of your brain, but it controls a lot. The amygdala is what processes our emotions. I like to call it the smoke detector of the brain. So what happens if a smoke detector were to go off right now, what would we do? I hope not just sit here. We would leave, right? We would get up and leave, and we wouldn't have to really think about it. We would automatically do that because that's what we've been trained to do, right? The smoke detector is going to go off to tell us that there is what? Smoke. That's what a smoke detector tells us, that there is smoke, possibly a fire, something like that. So the amygdala acts as the smoke detector of the brain. It's a warning system to us. If you're driving and someone pulls out in front of you, what are you going to do? Respond. Tell me the answer. Stop. How are you going to stop? Yes, I heard brakes. Yes, you're going to slam on your brakes. Are you going to think about it for a minute? No, I see some head shaking now. No, you're not going to think about it. What's going to happen if you sit and think about whether or not you should slam on your brakes? Say it louder. You're going to crash, right? You're going to rear end that person that pulled out in front of you, right? You don't have to think about it. The amygdala is what is responsible for that response in your body. It literally saves your life and probably has on many occasions. It tells you that there's danger and you automatically respond without even thinking about it. So what happens with stress, that bad stress that we talked about, not the good stress, but the bad stress that we talked about, what happens is that amygdala starts to misfire, and it does it often. So if you're in a chronic long-term state of stress, that amygdala is telling you danger, danger, danger all the time when there's not danger. And then we go into what's called the fight or flight response. Have you guys heard of the fight or flight response? I see some heads shaking. Yeah, if you've ever taken a psych class, you've probably heard of that fight or flight. We've added one, it's called the fight or flight or freeze response. And that happens when your brain signals to you danger. And it does that when you're chronically stressed. So the fight response is that angry response. That is that agitated, overly emotional, unable to sit still. We all tend to be one or the other, so you may tend to be more of a fight response or a flight or a freeze response. If you tend more towards a fight response, you're probably going to be agitated a lot. when you get stressed, or you might be snippy with your roommate or your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. You might get more snippy. You might be pacing in your room because you just can't sit still. That's a fight response. The flight response is more for people who become withdrawn. They may be depressed. They may shut down. So when they get stressed, they just shut down. They may isolate more in their room. They may not talk to anyone. And then the freeze response, these are the people who can't say anything at all. So this is a person who maybe they're overly stressed. They sit down at their computer to write their paper, and they can't think of anything. They just sit there and stare at the screen for hours, and they can't perform well. That is the freeze response. If you leave the chapel today and there's a lion sitting on the porch, then you're going to act one of three ways. Probably, most likely one of three ways. Person who tends to have a fight response is going to fight the lion. Person who has a flight response is going to run as fast as they can in the opposite direction. And a person who tends to have a freeze response will stand there in fear and not move. Okay? So this happens a lot with our stress. Obviously, I don't think we're going to walk out and see a lion. But when you have chronic and long-term stress, a lot of times you're living in a constant state of one of these. And that kind of just gives you a little more information about what's happening in the body when you're stressed. So how do we recognize stress? How do you know if you're stressed? Most of you are going to know if you're stressed. But let's ask some questions you can ask yourself to see if you're feeling stressed. One question is, can I easily calm myself down when I'm feeling agitated? And that's more like that nervous agitation. Can you calm yourself down? You're going to feel agitated. That's a normal human emotion. You're going to feel nervous at times. But can you calm yourself down when you do feel agitated and nervous? If you can't, then that might be a sign that you're dealing with long-term stress. Another question is, can I easily let go of my anger? So we talked about that fight response. Are you able to let it go? When your roommate annoys you, can you let it go? Or are you going to hold on to it all day long and be frustrated about it? Or maybe you notice that your roommate is irritated all the time. Maybe they're stressed. Hang on. Another question is, am I distracted or moody? So are you easily distracted? Do you sit down to write that paper and you're doing all the other things? You're picking up your phone constantly. You can't focus without getting on social media for 20 minutes here and there. What about being moody? Maybe you feel happy part of the day. Maybe you feel sad. Maybe you feel just blah half the day, and you're just kind of like this much of the day. Another question is, when I have low energy, do I know how to rejuvenate myself? So we're all going to have low energy. You're all going to be tired at times, but do you know how to rejuvenate yourself? All right, so now we're going to go into signs and symptoms, and I'm going to go through 4 different categories: cognitive, physical, emotional, and behavioral. And I'll just go through those symptoms. So some cognitive symptoms of stress. What's cognitive mean? Do you guys know? It's in the picture. Good job. Your brain, yes. So some symptoms of stress in your brain would be things like memory problems. You may notice that you sit down to take a test, and you don't remember anything. That is a symptom of stress. Inability to concentrate, poor judgment, seeing only the negative. Maybe you used to be a really positive person, and now all you can see is the negative. Anxious or racing thoughts, and constant worrying. So are you constantly thinking about the thing that you're stressed about? If it's finances, or if it's your sport or work or whatever, are you constantly thinking about that thing? Or maybe it's all of it, and you just constantly worry about it. Those are some cognitive symptoms. Some physical symptoms. So you can see from this picture that physical symptoms of stress go from the hair on your head all the way through your body. Every part of your body can be affected by stress. And that hair is pointing to hair. I'm not going to go through every symptom there, but it says it's thinning. It can thin your hair. But some physical symptoms of stress is aches and pains. Do you feel aches and pains, but you don't have an injury, you don't have an illness? diarrhea or constipation. So some people, depending on your body type, may react one way or the other. Another one would be nausea. A lot of times when people are overly stressed, they just feel nauseous all the time. Dizziness, chest pain, those are symptoms of anxiety. Those are the physical symptoms of anxiety. Rapid heartbeat. Frequent colds is another one. Sometimes that happens, especially when you guys are around each other a lot. You guys are in the dorms, you're sharing germs, but maybe you keep getting the colds, but your roommate or your friend down the hall doesn't. Frequent colds can be a sign that your immune system is down because you're stressed. Some more symptoms would be emotional symptoms. We've kind of already talked about some of this, but some emotional symptoms would be moodiness, irritability or short temper, agitation, inability to relax, feeling overwhelmed. That's the word that is used a lot when I see students in my office. They come in and they say, I'm just feeling overwhelmed. And that's a symptom of chronic stress. A sense of loneliness or isolation. I can tell you right now that you are not alone in your stress, that the majority of college students will feel stress at some point in their college years. And in particular, right now, in the middle of the semester, that's when most students feel the most stress. And then just depression in general, unhappiness. After experiencing stress for a long period of time, it can cause you to feel depressed. When your body is constantly releasing those stress hormones or constantly living in that fight or flight or freeze response, it weighs you down over time, and you can become depressed. Some more signs and symptoms would be behavioral. So some of these would be eating more or less. So some people stress eat. When they're feeling stressed, they will eat more. Some people feel nauseous and can't eat at all. Sleeping too much or too little. Some people tend to just want to lay in the bed and bed rot all day. Other people can't sleep at all. They're so worried and stressed out that they can't fall asleep or they can't stay asleep once they do fall asleep. Isolating yourself from others. We kind of talked about that earlier, but this is one of those behavioral symptoms where maybe you aren't going to hang out with friends. Maybe you're not being as social as you once were, going to Slack events or anything. You're just, because you're feeling bad all the time, you just don't want to be around other people. Procrastinating or neglecting responsibilities. I know none of you have ever procrastinated, ever, while you've been here, but that is a sign of stress because it's hard to get that motivation going when you feel stressed. It's hard to start that project or start that big thing that you have to do. If you're using alcohol, cigarettes, weed, or drugs to relax, that's a symptom of stress as well. And I will say this, alcohol is a depressant. So if you're using alcohol to help you with stress, it's only making it worse. You don't want to do that. If you're using alcohol to cope with your stress. So you want to make sure that you are not using substances to cope. Nervous habits such as nail biting, pacing, etc. Picking, pulling hair, things like that are all behavioral symptoms of stress. So you guys are like, okay, you've spent a lot of time talking about how bad stress is, how bad it is on our bodies, what our bodies are doing, what happens with stress. So we're going to talk about how to deal with stress now. So some stress management strategies. Avoid unnecessary stress. That's the first one. You guys are like, yeah, we know that, Heather. Yes, avoid unnecessary stress. But what I find when I'm working with people is that a lot of times there are things in your life that are there that are stressing you out that don't have to be. And so then we start talking about boundaries, setting boundaries. Are there things that you need to say no to? Maybe you're over-involved. Maybe you have committed to too many things. Ask yourself, is there an area that I need to cut out? Or is there an area that I need to step back from because I have organic chemistry this semester or something like that? Maybe I need to say no in these areas so that I can focus more in this area. So learn to say no. Learn to have boundaries in your life. It's okay to say no to some things. Now, you can't say no to everything. And that's where altering the situation, if possible, comes into play. Sometimes you can alter the situation. Maybe your work is stressing you out. Maybe your boss will allow you to take a day off so that you can study for your OChem test or something. Maybe you can alter the situation. If possible, do so. Don't be afraid to alter the situation if possible. But also, you can't change everything, right? So sometimes you do have to adapt to the stressor. I can guarantee that the majority of your professors aren't going to let you take your test next week because you feel stressed, right? So sometimes you just have to adapt to the stressor. So how are you going to adapt? Sometimes it could be that you have to say no in some other areas, or you have to maybe don't hang out with friends that weekend because you need to study, or don't play video games for X amount of time that night because you need to study, or whatever it may be. So adapt to the stressor when you need to. The next one is accept the things you cannot change. And that one's a hard one. That one's one that you may be dealing with for the rest of your life. There's going to be things that come into your life that we can't change, we can't do anything about. So sometimes we have to work towards accepting those things. And that's something we do in the counseling room a lot. There's a lot of things that have happened to people that they just can't change. And so we start talking about how do we accept this? How do we accept this in our life and move forward? Little things as well. Like I said, you're not going to be able to change your professor's mind about when the final exam is or whatever. You're going to have to take that exam to get that grade. So you got to accept it and then adapt to it. Figure out how to work around the other things going on in your life so that you can focus on the one thing. Make time for fun and relaxation. So some people make too much time for fun and relaxation, and some people make no time for fun and relaxation. So make sure that you make some time. It is very important to take time away from all the things that are stressing you out and just have a little bit of fun and relax. Sometimes I sit down with my students and we look at their schedule, and there is no time at all to just relax. And I will tell them, I want you to schedule 20 minutes to just watch Netflix. Watch your favorite show or watch one episode just so you can turn your mind off and relax for a little bit. And it's amazing how much a person's stress level can improve by adding something to their schedule. But the thing that they're adding is some fun and relaxation. The next one is adopt a healthy lifestyle. Make sure that you're eating well, that you're drinking plenty of water, that you're sleeping. A lot of you guys are like, I don't sleep. This is college. We sleep 3 hours a night. Studies will show that a college female needs 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep a night to function well, and a college male needs 7 hours to function well. And you all are looking at me like, that is not what I get. I know. I was a college student once. We did not get that much sleep. That's 8 hours of uninterrupted, or 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, being healthy, making sure you're exercising. Some more tips. Keep in mind that stress isn't always a bad thing. Remember, we talked about the difference between good stress and bad stress. So ask yourself when you're feeling stressed, is this good stress? Is this going to work for me? Is this going to do some good things for me? Is it going to help me perform better? Or is this bad stress? Is it chronic, long-term, and it's causing all these other symptoms that we talked about? But keep that in mind, that when you do feel stressed, it's not always a bad thing. The next one is talk about your problems even if they won't be solved. And I cannot stress this enough, that simply talking about what's going on in your life can help your brain gain a sense of control over it. You can talk about it with a friend, a family member. You can come to me in counseling and talk about it. But just simply talking about what's going on in your life can help you gain a sense of control over it and can help you process it a little better. The next one is prioritize your responsibilities. Make a to-do list and put the most important things on the to-do list where it matters to you. So for me, when I was in college, when I had a lot to do, the way I would prioritize my to-do list is I would put the least important things first, the little things, and get those done, and then I could focus 100% on the big thing. Not everyone's like that. A lot of people like to put their most important things first and then focus on the little things. But for me, that's just how I found it worked. So if I had a little quiz or something I needed to study for, I would do that, and then I would have the rest of the night to focus on that paper that was due. I was a psych major, so I had a research paper in every single psych class in college. So when I was in my upper level classes, I would have 4 and 5 research papers in one semester to do at the very end. And so I would get all the little things done so that I could focus on the big thing. Figure out what works for you. Some of you may be like me. Some of you may want to focus on the big thing. But figure out what works. So you're going to have to add in all the other life things because it's not just school. So you've got practice, you have work, you have, all the things, finances, family time, relationship time, all of that. Put that on your to-do list and then prioritize it. And you may have to do that daily because it changes every day. You have different classes every day. You have different schedules every day. So you may have to change that every day. The next one is focus on the basics. We kind of already talked about this, but I will say that I notice around this time of year, October in particular, when students start showing up to class in their pajamas, or they haven't showered, or they're not eating well, they're not sleeping, they're not making their bed. You may notice this on the halls. RAs start to notice this as well. People aren't cleaning up. Focus on the basics of taking care of yourself, because when you're super stressed, sometimes the first thing that goes out the window is the basics of just taking care of yourself. Eating, sleeping, taking a shower, doing your laundry, things like that. You'd be surprised at just how much better you will feel if you just make your bed in the morning. It's just simply making your bed before you start your day. The next one is don't put all your eggs in one basket. So what does that mean? Don't focus so much in one area that you neglect other areas of your life. So don't focus so much on your sport that you neglect all of your schoolwork. Remember, you're here to be a student. You're here to get a degree. But also don't focus so much on one class that you neglect all your other classes. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Focus, make sure you, like we talked about, prioritize. You don't have to put time evenly into every single thing, because those of you in OChem are going to focus a lot more on OChem than you might some other class. So you might have to make kind of like a pie chart. Maybe half of it is OChem, and then there's a fourth of it that is your social life, and then the other fourth is your other classes or something. But just make sure you're prioritizing and you're not focusing 100% in one area, because then your other areas are going to be neglected. Okay. The other things on that list were set aside time for yourself. That goes back to having fun and relaxation. It can be just simply watching TV for a little bit. But set aside time, however you take care of yourself. It could be going out with friends. It could be reading your Bible for a little bit. It could be reading a book or just walking around the oval. But anything that you can do to just take care of yourself, make sure you keep that in your life. Put it on your to-do list. And then the last thing is keep things in perspective. What you are stressed about right now, ask yourself, am I going to be worried about this a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And use that to figure out what is most important. Some of you are like, like nursing major, if you guys fail a certain amount of times, you're out of the program, right? So that's important, right? So that might be something that you put more focus on that than some of the other areas that are stressing you out. But ask yourself, is this something that I'm going to be stressed out about in 5 years? I remember being very stressed many times in college, but I cannot tell you exactly what those things were, why I was stressed out, and it's been a long time since I've been in college. But it's some of these things are not going to matter even a week from now. So ask yourself, keep it in perspective, and ask yourself, is this going to still stress me out later on? So just keep that in perspective. That's all I have for you. Hopefully this has been beneficial to you when it comes to stress management. If you feel like your stress is out of hand, if you feel like you cannot manage your stress in a healthy way, come see me. Set up an appointment. We can do some sessions of counseling and see if that helps as well. I hope you guys have a good Monday.